Gowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Slattery, I listened carefully as Professor Lazarus was asked about the limits of prosecutorial discretion, and I did hear him make a series of arguments about statutory construction. I did not hear him address the constitutional implications of prosecutorial discretion and what limits, if any, may exist. So I thought I might take my chances with you. Can you tell me what are the limits, if any, on this thing my friends on the other side call prosecutorial discretion?
Well, I don't think there are any hard and fast limits, set in the Constitution, of course. Not many that have much guidance that has come from the Supreme Court on this. But certainly, as one of my co-panelists mentioned, prosecutorial discretion does not allow the president to exempt entire classes of individuals. It shouldn't allow that. That should be, at a minimum, outside of the scope of that discretion.
Do you think the power emanates from his ability to pardon after the fact? I mean, what's the constitutional origin of prosecutorial discretion?
I think it's inherent in his duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It's, it says take care to faithfully execute the laws. It doesn't just say shall execute all laws. So it's inherent, particularly given the scope of,
But if I accept that theory, then take care that the laws be faithfully executed. The use of the article or the word faithfully seems to minimize the duty to take care that the law be executed. If I were to accept that theory, then faithfully is a limiter, and I view it differently. I view it as more of an exclamation point that we really, really mean that your job is to make sure that the laws are executed. I want to ask you about this fact, Pat. Are you familiar with the case Zavadas? Are you familiar with that case in the immigration context?
No, I'm not.
Well, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to give it a try anyway, and I'm sure one of the professors will do like they did in the past and correct me if my factual summary is wrong. But Zavadas is a Supreme Court case where the government cannot indefinitely detain convicted criminals who have finished serving their time, but the host country will not take them back. So think about the worst host country you can. Let's think about what used to be Somalia. We have someone from Somalia who commits, let's say, murder in the United States, and he or she serves the sentence, and they're supposed to be removed, but Somalia won't take them back. So guess what happens? They're released. They can't gain lawful entry into the country, but we're going to release them into the very same country that they couldn't gain lawful entry into because the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, doesn't think you ought to be able to indefinitely detain criminal aliens who have finished their sentence. You with me so far, factually?
Yes.
All right. What if a President King, God forbid, but what if a President King were to decide that he doesn't like that law?
All in favor of God forbid?
He doesn't like that law, so he is going to not prosecute anyone in the penal system for false imprisonment, for violation of 1983. He really thinks you ought to be indefinitely detained and not released back on the innocent public. Can we do that if Republicans were to somehow retake the White House? Can we decide we're not going to enforce that law?
Well, I think that's certainly a tough situation, and I would hope that the president would work with Congress to change the law if
Well, that was the Supreme Court that did it, and they're tough to work with. You got to wait till one of them retires.
That is certainly a difficult situation, and I'm certainly not ratifying or endorsing what President Obama has done. And I think that clearly his interpretation of prosecutorial discretion is very broad. And
it's a little closer to anarchy than it is prosecutorial discretion, and I don't say that to be hyperbolic. The reality is this. Today it's immigration laws. So actually it's not just immigration laws. It's also mandatory minimums in drug cases. It's the so-called Affordable Care Act. Tomorrow it might be election laws. It might be discrimination laws. It might be some other category of law that he's waited a couple of years for Congress to act on, but Congress hadn't acted in the time period that he thinks that they should, so he's just going to do it summarily. I'll just caution, I know I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman, but I'll just caution my friends. You may like the use of prosecutorial discretion today. You will really not like it at some point. So this notion that we're going to conflate the episodic use of discretion to not prosecute a case with the wholesale announcing ahead of time that we're not going to prosecute certain broad categories of cases, I promise you there'll come a day where you cry out for the law to be faithfully executed, and I hope I live long enough to see it. I will yield back to the chairman.